We are on to video number 3. So this video is going to cover a lot. So again, you're going to want to get your notebook and a pen out because we are going to cover a lot of information, especially if you are wanting to get your dog trained and certified. I didn't share this before, but part of our story with getting Nash trained was that I started and stopped the process twice before we actually followed through with getting him certified. And the reason wasn't because I was lazy. It wasn't because something was wrong with Nash. It was because I didn't understand what the process looked like and I was confused. And I had a life. I had lots going on and I just didn't have the resources in front of me to adequately guide me through this process. So that's what we're doing in this video. We hope that it helps you, but it is going to be long. So take notes. And if you have questions, ask. We'd love to help continue to guide you. So let's say that you have decided that your puppy or your dog's temperament and personality is so fit to become a therapy dog. That's awesome. That is our whole heart behind this tour, to educate, encourage, and inspire others to get out and get their dogs trained and certified to go love their community. So you'll have to ask yourself a few questions. The first being, would my dog and me make a good therapy dog team? Because y'all are in it together and you both matter. So if your dog loves people and loves other animals and is patient and confident in a variety of different settings, then therapy work might really be for you. But you also have to ask yourself, do I like people? Do you have a warm, loving, and inviting personality and heart for loving and serving others? Then yeah, therapy work's probably for you. But you also have to ask yourself if you have the time to commit to therapy work. Now, it's not just the time to commit when you're serving, but it's all that prep work prior. It's the training, it's the certification, it's the homework that we'll talk about here in a second. All those things really add up, and you have to be honest with yourself and really think, do you have the time to devote to consistent daily training and various monthly volunteer opportunities? If you do, then go for it. Now, it usually takes up to a year to get your pup trained and certified as a therapy dog, but Juno took a little bit longer, and Tara is going to explain what their situation was and why it took them a bit.
Yeah. Truth be told, I think it took us 3. So, so if you were with us in an earlier video, I shared that, I was in a hospital and I made this decision and I was like, this is what I want to do. And little did I know it would be 3 years later before I would actually be able to realize that goal. So we will get into like the specifics here in a little bit, but essentially, you have to take a test, and there are several different things on the test that you have to perform. And Juno, she was a breeze through 99% of it. There is one particular part of the test where it's called accepting a friendly person or stranger, someone that approaches your dog. Your dog's supposed to be sitting very calm, and the person is going to come up. and also to keep in mind, so at this point in time, Juno is like 2-3 years old. So, everybody was like, oh, labs, they're crazy puppies, give it till 2 and they'll calm down. Juno never got that memo. She never calmed down. So she still has a lot of puppy moments in her, and she'll be 13 here in June. So I was like, okay, she's not calming down. Like I'm still struggling with this. And so, we could have passed the test if that wasn't part of it, but that was the one part that she could not contain herself when someone came up to pet her, to say hello. Now, she was friendly. It wasn't a bad thing. She wasn't trying to bite them. But she was crazy energetic. She couldn't sit still. She was trying to lick their hands, and it was not the behavior becoming of a therapy dog. And so we literally worked on that one activity for probably 2 years before I felt confident enough that she could behave herself and do that. Mm-hmm. And of all the things too, that she couldn't handle, it's the most common thing that, that she was going to encounter. And so they're funny. They will surprise you in different ways. And, some things that you think they might struggle with, they might not. And that it might be something that you didn't expect, but, it might.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, you have to remember, if you're going through this process, a dog is a living, breathing creature, and they're in charge of their own decisions. Sometimes, and we got this from our trainer, but we look at Nash and we're like, Nash, make good choices, because it's all up to them to decide. Yeah. And some days we feel off, or we're just not excited to do things. Like, they have the same kinds of days like that. And it's so important just to remember that. And it's just remembering that repetition, just like you said, you've learned for you tried for 2 years on that. She got it. So I have to ask you, and this is kind of off script, but what kept you guys encouraged in that time? Because that it was a while for her to get that down.
To be honest with you, it was, I mean, she couldn't tell me, but so it was me. I mean, I don't know if she really realized that, that repetition was to get us somewhere else. But it was my determination. It was something that I wanted to do so bad. And I wanted, I was looking for a passion, and I was looking for an outlet and a way to volunteer and give back to my community. And I just thought, how awesome is this to be able to do all of this with your dog? And so I was,
my gosh,
head over heels in love with my dog. And I was like, the more time I can spend with her, the better. And if it's we could do something good for other people together, I mean, I couldn't think of something better than that. And so, did I get discouraged? Absolutely. Did I get frustrated? Yes. I mean, but I just worked through it. And like you said, there are off days, but there are days that they have really good days. And there were enough moments where I knew she could do it. We just had to keep practicing. So
I'm so proud of y'all. I'm so proud. I'm so happy that you kept going, which I feel like we could talk about Juno's experience and yours for hours. Like, I'm so encouraged by you both, and I know everybody else would be too. But to loop us back, because I got us a little off topic, but I think it's so important for us to consider too. I say something that not all people are meant to be therapists. Not all dogs are meant to be therapy dogs. And I have actually encountered a few people that have said to me, I want to do therapy work so bad, but my dog is not a fit for it. And I think that's one of the hardest things for us to accept. Yeah, except if you're like, I have such a heart for this, but the dog that I have doesn't. And it's just this whole process is just being honest with yourself and honest with your dog's abilities and personalities. And we'll cover more on that later, which I think we always say, but we have so much more coming. But it's just seeing if this work aligns with both of your personalities. Some people have a big heart to do therapy work, and some dogs just don't. So know yourself, know your dog, and just be honest about your both of your personalities and your limitations.
Yeah. Really good.
Also to note, therapy dogs don't need to be a certain size or a certain breed. It really comes down to their temperament and their personality. You'll see an amazing golden like Nash doing therapy work, and then you'll see a pit bull like Cole, the deaf dog on Instagram. He's amazing. Look him up. You'll see him doing therapy work that just changes lives. And that's what I love so much about therapy work is there's not a one size fits all. Everybody has a different story. And I'm so excited to dive into that and really talk about what the direction of that looks like. So Tara, let's go through and talk about what it looks like from getting your dog, bringing them home, let's say as a puppy, or as just a new to you pup. Let's say you adopted them. Let's walk through what that looks like.
Yeah. I mean, obviously when you adopt a dog, there's a whole, different slew of things you have to consider, in that dog's history. And that's, we're not going to dive into a lot of that in these videos, but, I would say just, as a new dog owner, you just really need to know that you're now a parent of this creature and you have to be really responsible with it. So if you do have the puppy situation or, it's puppy, or say you adopted a younger dog that, is just ready to jump into whatever routine you're ready to do. The key, I can't even say it enough, is socialization. Socialize them. Now, caveat, if you have a wee baby puppy, there are things you have to be as excited as you're going to be to take your puppy out and like let the world love on your pup. There are health concerns that you have to watch when you have a really young pup. So you can't, be in public spaces. You can't let them walk freely until they have all their vaccinations. So just kind of as a blanket statement, you want to make sure that you're just double checking with your veterinarian and you're not taking them out too early, pretty much like same with the baby. So you can't, as excited as you are, you have to be a little bit careful in the beginning. So let's say that your pup's of age and it has all of its shots and you're ready to go. Get creative. I even think back when we were doing it when she was, real small, and the simplest things, it could be when you're going to go get the mail, take your puppy with you, and you never know who you might encounter on the walk to the mailbox. Or, it might be, I can remember a time where, we needed to run some errands. And so my husband ran into the store and I remember just standing outside the store because it was
I love that.
There's people there, I think you can get really creative with how you socialize your dog. I mean, obviously just taking them with you everywhere is a good practice, just naturally, because they're adorable. They're going to meet a ton of people. But if you have aspirations to be a therapy dog team, by watching videos like this and educating yourself, you can kind of plant those seeds really early and put your puppy in situations that they might, that would help them pass the test easier, or, just be more ready for that type of work. And you can start at a really young age. So,
And to piggyback off that and moving into our next point, it's training. And socialization and training, especially with such a young puppy, really can go hand in hand. And I'll never forget what our trainer told us. And it was to, setting aside work and time. I mean, to do training is great. And that's so important. But let's face it, like the majority of us just aren't sitting at home training our dogs. Like we have work, we have commitments, we have to go to the grocery store. So the best thing that you can do is just incorporate training into daily activities. And the best part is that with a dog, let's say you bring a dog home at 8 weeks, which was Nash's age when he came home. It's never too early to begin training. They are so smart and so impressionable in those early weeks of life that the more you can do then, the better off you'll be. And specifically going back to the socialization thing, like Tara said, get creative. I mean, I would take Nash to Home Depot. I wouldn't buy anything. The amount of times I've been to Home Depot and haven't purchased anything. We've bought a lot at Home Depot, but I took Nash, I put a towel down on the cart and I put him in the cart and I wheeled him around the store and he loved it. And it was such great socialization without him coming in contact with anything that could harm him. Right. But going back to training, I mean, it's never too early to start working on all of your basic commands, such as sit, stay, come, drop, down, leave it, etc. Something that I did and I used was YouTube. YouTube is filled with such wonderful content that's going to help you learn to teach your dog and train your dog. Now, I have to say, this is what I did. And I was in a season of life where I had a lot of free time, but it really did create a really great bond between me and Nash. And I'm really glad that I did it. But if you don't have the time or you don't have the capacity, let's say you have young kids and you're just stretched thin, you can absolutely go get a trainer's help. That's great. You're not better off or worse off doing either or. So be encouraged in that. The end result will still be the same. It's just how you get there might be a different part of your story.
But there's professional alone. I will just say, I didn't know what I was doing, and I could never have done it without our local training facility and the people there who gave us the knowledge. And then yes, we would practice it, but count me in the column of people that needed help.
Well, don't get me wrong. I mean, Nash, absolutely. We did, I would say like 90% of his training, and then we did 10% with the trainer. We called it putting the cherry on top of the ice cream sundae. Yeah. And everybody's story looks different. And again, it's just going back to the being honest with what your options are and where you're at in life. But professional trainers are wonderful. I mean, you can do group training at a local facility. You can do private training in a local facility. You can do private training in your home. There's so many options. And I really want to encourage everybody to just research, if you want to use a trainer, just to research training facilities in your area, look up reviews, see where is logistically the best option for you. And if you want to do something at home, I encourage y'all to Google Canine Good Citizen Test. There's 10 steps that you can focus your training on, especially getting started, to really give yourself the direction and how you're looking to train your dogs.
Yes, yes. The canine good citizen test, you'll often hear it referred to as the CGC. That's kind of
Yes.
the shorthand. Everybody refers to it as the CGC. It is kind of just that baseline stamp of approval that your dog has mastered basic obedience. So
Mhm.
it's offered through the AKC. So,
Mhm.
and again, we talked about like it is not breed specific. You don't have to have an AKC certified animal. It's just an AKC kind of funded thing. And it is, yeah, it's just a basic obedience test. Most training facilities will offer them. I believe if you go on akc.org, you can even try to find specific testing sites where you can take the
Mhm.
test. There's usually a fee. What's interesting is actually the first time we certified as a therapy team, the CGC test was kind of like rolled into it. So I didn't,
Oh, that's convenient.
yeah. And I don't know if they all do that because they're all very different. And so I never went into it as like, we took the CGC and then we took therapy dog. We kind of just, it all happened together, which I almost wish it would have happened separately. I think it would have been a little bit easier to
Mhm.
understand.
Like
Again,
a little check mark, like did this, did
yeah,
this.
yeah, getting
Mhm.
back to how confusing this can be. But if you think of the canine good citizen as step one, that's a really good
Mhm.
way to just go about it. So you get your CGC test. So like I said, there's usually a fee, maybe $10, $20, depending on the location. But most often, if you want to move on and become a certified therapy dog team, you will need to show that you've passed this baseline CGC test. So it's just a good thing to do right off the
A,
bat.
a good prereq. And even if you're not looking to get your dog trained and certified as a therapy dog, it's a really wonderful
Yes.
guide. And it's great to have, even if therapy dog work isn't your end result.
Right. And I have heard of situations where outside of the therapy dog world, having your dog have its CGC title can help you in specific,
Mhm.
situations where, I don't know, maybe you wanted to, take your dog with you to like a bed and breakfast or something. And if you were able to show that that animal has been certified in some form of obedience, it just helps. And it gives, it validates the behavior of your animal. Um,
Yep.
and so the reason that, I had said that the CGC is kind of a prerequisite to the therapy dog work is because CGC is obedience specific. So it doesn't touch on like simulations of like what it would be like to volunteer with your dog. That's not what it's there to do. It's there to check off those first couple kind of like basic obedience functions. And
Mhm.
so I'm going to use my notes because I did not memorize all 10 of them, but there are 10 things that you will have to learn to do. And like I said, most training facilities they're all going to be aware of this. And I even think that places like Petco and PetSmart, they even have trainers that they can possibly offer this test as well. So
They do. Yep.
they do. Okay.
Yep.
So the 10 exercises are accepting a friendly stranger, which we all know Juno failed miserably at for very long. And I even think that, yeah, it was the very first thing that's tested. It was like, I couldn't
You're
even
like, oh
build up
no.
like, okay, we're getting our rhythm. It was like first thing to do was the thing that she was possibly going to fail. So the second one is sitting politely for petting. So they just need to continue to sit there and let somebody pet them. Appearance and grooming, which like this is a no-brainer. I mean, everybody is gonna, if you care this much about your dog to train them and get them to this point, they're going to look fabulous while they're testing. Walking on a loose leash. So that just means like your dog isn't pulling you away. Your dog isn't walking you, but you're walking your dog.
Mhm.
Walking through a crowd. They want to make sure that your dog can behave, in kind of tight, crowded situations. Sit down on command and staying in place. So that's pretty obvious. You want them to be able to sit when they're told, and you want them to be able to stay put when they need to. Coming when called. So a good, reliable recall is always helpful. Reaction to another dog. Obviously, this is huge when you're, just especially being able to say that your dog is well behaved. You don't want your dog to react negatively to another dog. Reacting or possibly not reacting to distractions. And so, that could be just a bunch of stuff, just like kind of real world, if you're walking your dog down the street and, there's like a siren or, a runner passes you or whatever it might be, you don't want your you don't want your dog to be skittish. And that's just a good exercise to work through that. And then supervised separation. And so this one is interesting because in the event that's, I mean, most times your dog is with you and everything's fine. But what would happen if there was an emergency and you needed to just like, hey, hold my dog real quick. I'll be right back. And some dogs cannot handle being away from their owner. And so this is, I think like this is kind of part of the test that people may not think that they have to actually work on, is that you have to work on some distance. So, and that's definitely part of the test that I saw some of Juno's friends struggle with, because they're great in every scenario, but when their owner walked more than 10 steps away, they couldn't handle it. So that's
well, to piggyback on that, I think a lot of people, they see if their dog whines in their leave, they're like, oh, they love me. But like, if you're doing therapy work, like you said, you've got to be able to hand them off in a situation and then know I'm not being abandoned, I'm not being left. But that again, like those 10 steps, it really does show you like, okay, if I'm just doing this at home, like this is what I can work on. And you really can use that as a guide. I love that.
Yeah. And I think that there's, it's good to be aware of that, right? Because I think if you start on this journey, you're so excited and you're with your dog 24/7. And while that's great, you also have to build in some separation and some distance, because you don't want to inadvertently train your dog to have anxiety when you're not around.
Right. So, right. And that's easy for us to all say too, coming out of COVID isolation. I mean, we've been with our dogs 24/7. So I have even noticed that Nash, he is so much more used to us being with him. And I've almost noticed those moments where he's alone, where he's like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. And he used to be totally fine. And now I've noticed, so we actually will purposely leave him 30 minutes, 2 hours, whatever, just to give him that healthy alone time, which is important.
Yeah. And I mean, here's just a, anecdote that I didn't realize. I wouldn't have thought about this when we first got Juno. When we first got Juno, I was working full time. So my husband too, we were both outside the house. Well, in the course of, having Juno over these past 12 years, I started my own business and I work from home full time now. And I've actually stopped and thought, oh my gosh, what would I have done? Like if I rewind and Juno was a puppy right now, I would have to very purposefully leave the house. And because I thought like, man, if I had a puppy right now, I would not want that puppy to think that I'm going to be around 24/7, And I would never have thought about that before, because it just was built in. I would go to work every day and come back home and, that was it. But I know there's a lot of people, not even just like now because of the situation with everybody being at home, but there's a lot of people that work from home that I wouldn't have thought about that, and so that's definitely some things to consider. And to your point about the whining and whimpering, and those are the things that the judges are going to look for. Those are signs of distress, and so they want your dog to be able to sit there without the sounds, without heavy panting or pacing. They want them to look nice and calm and just wait for you to get back.
And confident. Yep. Absolutely.
So assuming that you fly through all of the 10 things, and I will say the evaluators are very, very kind. It's not a drill sergeant situation where you get in there, and honestly, I built it up in my head to be so much scarier than it really was.
Me too. It was a breeze in comparison to what I thought it would be.
Absolutely. I was scared to death and I was so nervous, and, and then the more nervous I got, I was like, but I'm making Juno nervous. And then I got more nervous. And evaluators are wonderful. And, they definitely, they see how much work you've put in and they give you the chance to succeed. So it's nothing to be scared of, and in the event that something doesn't work, you can always just take the test again. It's not like a one and done, and it's not a bad thing if you have to come back. It's nothing to be embarrassed about. So if you do pass, then the evaluator will give you, they sign off on your official CGC paperwork, and you get a certificate, a very lovely certificate that's sent to you in the mail by the AKC, stating that you have your CGC certification. And then at that point, you have that kind of baseline obedience, and now you have the choice to to do other things. And that could be, you know, the AKC has different titles and different levels of things within their organization. If you love obedience and you want to continue, you know, down that path, you could continue down the AKC route, or you could move on and start to investigate the therapy dog world a little bit more.
And if you do choose to go down the therapy dog route, you really just need to decide what type of volunteer work you want to do. If you haven't already, I feel like, Tara, you knew I want to do hospitals because of your story, and that is so personal. And you knew with that you needed to go through, you know, specifics outside of maybe necessarily what somebody else would do. So, you know, we're still thinking of where do you begin and what do you do when you want to go for training. So when we think of deciding what type of volunteer work you want to do, ask yourself some things again. You know, say, do you want to be with kids inside schools? Do you want to help during reading time? Do you want to meet with seniors in a nursing home or an assisted living home? Do you want to volunteer at the airport and help people who are stressed out about traveling? Do you just want to spread joy and comfort at a children's hospital or a regular hospital? Maybe, and I'm going to keep going because this gives people an idea and ways to think outside the box that really hit home for them. Maybe you want to work with college students on a college campus to help with test anxiety.
Yep.
Maybe you want to work with military families who have deployed parents. Or maybe you want to incorporate your dog into your work. Maybe you're a therapist or a teacher. The list goes on and on. I mean, there's so many ways that dogs impact people and truly make a difference in their life. And you get to decide. That's the best part. You get to come up with the formula of what works for you. So depending on the type of work that you want to get that you want to do, it's going to determine the local or national, I guess I should say local and or, because you can be involved with a local organization and a national organization.
Sure.
But the work you want to do is going to decide what organization to get involved with. It's also going to determine the type of training and evaluations required and the continued certification and education. So, Tara, you and I talked about how long a therapy dog visit is. So would you mind covering that and what that expectation looks like?
Yeah, no problem. So, you know, again, I'm super open and honest about all of the things that we've done well and some of the things that we have done, you know, not so well. So something, I will use the airport situation as a really good example. So therapy dog visits typically are 1 to 2 hours max. And you will find the more therapy dog people that you interact with, honestly, I would say it leans more toward the 1 hour mark. More, I would say the 2 hours is a little bit, a little less common. But in my experience, you know, anything over that 2 hours starts to be a little bit too much. And it's so hard to, and again, this is what I was saying, where I think like the human almost, you know, there's so much for the human to learn and to be trained as well. And part of this is that when you're volunteering, it's so easy to get distracted, and there's, you know, amazing people and you're hearing their stories and they love your dog. And there's it's just like everyone's overflowing with love, and it's so fun that it's really easy. And I have totally done this, that you forget that your dog is working. And that every minute that your dog is accepting people and pets and love and hugs. And I mean, I've been, you know, at the airport, especially, like 1 minute there could be somebody, you know, posing for selfies with her. Another one, there's like 2 kids hanging on her, and all of that is stress to her. And she's working. And I have missed out on cues for sure. And so things to look for in your dog when you are volunteering: yawning. That usually starts first. She'll yawn. And we pose for a ton of pictures at the airport. And I have noticed that with all of the dogs, when they're in this, you know, we kind of all set them up and space them out and have them on a sit stay, and crowds of people will be taking their picture. And they're adorable and they're amazing. But those poor pups are also, you can tell, they're like, oh my gosh, like this is really hard. And yawning is a way that they express stress. Another one is panting. And I think that's another easy one to be like, oh, is it hot in here? Are they panting? Do they need some water? No, they're panting because they're stressed and they're tired and they need a break. And so, you know, with the panting, a lot of times like drooling will happen next. So they'll yawn, then they'll start panting, then they'll drooling, they'll be drooling. And then, once they're completely over it, and this has happened too, where like they just stop cooperating. And, not in a bad way, but you can just tell, like, okay, she's done. She's done posing for pictures. She's done behaving and sitting and doing all the things. Sometimes she'll lay down and you can tell that they are no longer interested. They're just kind of like disconnected. And sometimes, you'll look at your watch and you're like, oh my gosh, it's been an hour and 10 minutes. No wonder why my dog is acting this way. And so those are things that you'll learn as you do it. But, again, we are their advocate. And so no one is there to speak for them but us. And we're their partner, right? Like we're a team in this. And we as the handlers can't get caught up in the moment and lose sight of the fact that, our dog might really need us. And that might be something as simple as, a potty break, or it might just be time to go. And another thing I've seen too, where you can't, like Christina had said, they have bad days too. And who knows, there's so many things and the environment affects them and different, something could just be off. And you might be, and I mean, I'm guilty of this, of being like, okay, we're going to volunteer from this time to this time. And if it's just an off day and she's not feeling it, it's okay if you're only there 45 minutes. Because if you visit one person, that's one person's day that you made, and that's enough.
And it goes back to just, what we keep saying, it's just being honest with yourself and being honest with your dog. And that you'll see that carries throughout this whole series.
For sure. And to that point, one little thing I am going to throw in here on kind of to piggyback on the things that you were saying before about being really honest with yourself about, like what kind of work that you would want to do. Our story, you had said like, it was easy for me to make that decision because of the hospital. And it was at that time. But what I didn't tell you was that we were certified in, let me back up. When we got certified, I was super excited. And, yes, I knew I wanted to do the hospital, but my grandpap was in a nursing home. And so I thought, okay, great. I'm going to take her. And, nursing homes were not her speed. Like I should have known better, but she was way too energetic. She was, looking around and like, it was not a good fit for her energy. So and the reason that the hospital ended up being a good fit is because there's a million rooms to visit and she likes to be on the move. And the same thing with the airport. It's a good fit for her personality and her energy. And so to your point, Christina, when you said like, even if it's that your dog isn't fit for this type of work, you have to be really willing to say, as much as I might have wanted to volunteer in a nursing home, Juno can't. And so that now means that I can't volunteer in a nursing home in this capacity.
Exactly.
So I've lived that as well. I've had to come to terms with, that there are things that she can do, or to, another example could be that, hospitals, like you were saying, there's crisis dogs, there's, much higher level hospital type, therapy dogs. She's not cut out for any of that. And I'm okay with it. And it's just things that you have to be willing to admit and, just kind of know that there's plenty of good that you can do within, the realm that your dog is willing to do it. So.
And I think that's a perfect segue into what we want to talk about next, which is choosing an organization to volunteer with. And that piggybacks right off of that. So do you want to explain that part to us?
Yeah. So, especially, in the last, I would say even since I have been volunteering. So let's say the last decade, therapy dogs.
You're so awesome. A decade, y'all, a decade.
I can't believe it's been that long. It's at 9 years officially, but it was actually February. We just, February is when we took our test. It was crazy. So anyway, their therapy dog work is like blown up. Like it's so much more common now. It wasn't as common before. And with that is so many different opportunities. And so there are, it's good that there are so many opportunities, but it also means that you really have to do your homework. And so there's a lot of smaller nonprofits. And so in your area, you could look up, smaller organizations that work maybe just in your city. But then there are also much larger national organizations. And I've been involved with two of those. And those are organizations that they have a presence kind of nationwide. And so there's pluses and minuses. It's all just really depends on the type of work that you want to do. For example, say, a smaller nonprofit might just have relationships with maybe a handful of facilities in your area.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you wanted kind of like a much wider range of places to go, maybe, joining a national organization would make a little bit more sense for you.
And you can be, like we had said earlier, you can be involved normally if you're affiliated with a larger organization. You can also too serve within a local organization too. So again, it's just coming back to doing your homework and asking the questions based on where you want to serve.
Again, right, absolutely. And again, it's just about doing your homework.
Mhm.
Most of the organizations, they want you to do as much good as you can possibly do, but you do want to double check that, like, there wouldn't be any issues with, belonging to one and possibly
Yes.
crossing over with another or whatever it might be. So just do your homework and ask questions, and, and make sure that it's okay with everybody. So
And
do
to
that.
piggyback on that, sorry, Tara,
That's okay.
but to say, if I really want to serve at the airport, let's say you want to serve at your airport, you need to ask before you go down the rabbit hole of doing the training and getting yourself involved with an organization. There are a lot of airports that only work with a specific organization.
Right.
So ask the questions and make sure you are choosing the right organization before you start that process. And again, maybe create like a bank of questions that you want to ask the organization. Reach out via email or social media, call someone, and just ask and make sure they're hitting all of your criteria, because they want you to work with them, but it also has to be a good fit for you. So again, just asking questions and knowing what you want out of this, because you are going to serve, but you have to make sure you're in the right capacity. So
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, that was one of the reasons that I ended up becoming involved in more than one organization, because in my experience, I really wanted to be at the airport, and that meant that I needed to be affiliated with a specific group.
Right.
And I had to make changes accordingly. And so, yeah, and I wouldn't have known that had I not been asking those questions and really educating myself. So yes, that's a really key piece of advice. So on the topic of, like, yes, possible limitations or rules or restrictions or whatever it may be, let's just cover a little bit about, once you belong to XYZ organization, what does that mean? And so typically the organization, you will have to pay some dues. So there will be, some sort of a fee to belong to that organization. And then they have some requirements. And so they will provide insurance coverage for you. This is a big topic that, I don't think that people realize, that when you're out in the public and you're working, God forbid something happen, you want to make sure that you have some coverage. And so organizations, the plus of joining an organization, and sometimes some of the larger organizations, is that you get some of these benefits in the perks of belonging there. Some of them will have requirements on you, and what policies and procedures. You'll get a handbook. That handbook will outline all of their rules and policies within it. And for example, the one that I am involved with right now, they require a commitment, a time commitment. And that was new to me, because the other organization that I belong to, they didn't. And so it's just proof that, each one kind of has their own way of doing things. And for this one, you need to, I think it's that you need to log a certain number of visits within a 3-month period to prove that you're active and you're out there and you're keeping up, you're keeping up. So, again, the biggest thing that we're just saying is that, we understand that this is a little overwhelming. There is a lot, like, once you get to the actual, therapy dog world, there's a lot of different options within it. The best thing you can do, like Christina said, is just make a list, take some notes, and just ask questions before you make any decisions.
Yeah. And like you said, and I'll link to some questions that you can ask here, but it's like you covered. It's like, what are your dues cover? What does your insurance provide? What are the program requirements, policies, procedures, monthly time commitment? Like all of that, it goes into deciding where you want to serve. And I think that's important. So it's, you think about it, and let's say you've chosen an organization and you're like, okay, this is what we're going to do. From there, the steps can look very different, whether you choose a national organization and you're going to go serve at the hospital or the airport, or if you serve with a smaller local nonprofit in your area and you're just going to serve within a fire station or police station. Now, both of those are very, very important, but the work required to obtain those certification levels are a little bit different. So, you think about, the research and the homework, and we said this part was going to be part of your time commitment, but you just have to look at their website and see what the differences are. Because some groups, let's say you're going to work with a smaller organization locally, some of them only need for your training you to show proof of your canine good citizen exam that they've passed. Right. Some organizations require a little bit more. And it's just up to you to decide what that is and what you want to do. If you want to keep going, you may need to enroll your pup in more specific training.
Right. I'm so glad you touched that. Do not be surprised if it is an official facility, if that facility has their own version of a test that they want you to pass before they'll let you,
yes,
they'll let you in.
Yeah. So all these organizations, and this is where it gets confusing, but all of these organizations are going to require something different. So ask the questions, but really, just to go through some notes here, once you get involved with an organization, you'll probably have membership dues to pay. That's going to vary, again, from organization to organization. Roughly what you can expect, though, is about $25 to $30 a year. Yeah. You may need to enroll yourself and your pup in more specific courses. So you might need to become more trained in specific handler tactics. Your dog may need to be trained in more specific therapy dog training things. And again, that's just going to matter. You may need to go through a background check. Your dog may need to do a health screening. There, again, I keep saying this, but there might need to be more training done. And then you and your dog, based on the organization, might need to do on-site therapy sessions while you're being evaluated. So you would take your dog, you would go serve probably a couple of times with someone with you, evaluating what your dog does on those in-person sessions. There's going to be paperwork, membership paperwork. You're going to get your vest, you're going to get your badge, all that stuff goes into it. But the good news is once you get to that point, you're headed towards the finish line, which is the best part, which again is the end result, and it's doing the therapy work. So as you've seen, there's a ton of legwork up front. The best thing, if you're confused, watch these videos. But another great way to get involved is to ask a friend. So if you know someone that's done therapy work, which is what we did, and this is ultimately how we ended up getting NASH trained and certified, but it's asking a friend and having them help guide you and just asking the questions. So hopefully that gives you some more clarification on what this whole process looks like.
It was a lot.
As you see, there's a lot, but once you have the steps, and we're going to put together a document that just really clearly guides you through this and what the steps look like, it's going to be a lot easier. But just know that all good things take time. Rome was not built in a day. And all of this homework and all of this prep work is worth it. And once you get to serve with your dog, it's not just the people that you're going to love and impact, but it's truly going to change your life. So set yourself up, set your expectations right, and just know that once you get to the end, it's going to be so worth it. So stay encouraged and keep going.